Welcome to the NC Spin After Spin. Additional comments from our panelists just available to you on the website. Question to all, starting with Chris. What did you wish you had a chance to say and didn't get to say?
Well, we talked about some of the issues that were coming up this session, and this might be the longest we've gone without talking about HB2. So I'm going to break that and mention a couple of things. Well, I actually was surprised. There were some Republican legislators who were quoted in their local paper session previews saying we want to repeal HB2, and Speaker Moore even hinted at it on the first day that they're working on something. So I think there was some people thought after the special session, which, not getting into who was right and who was wrong in that was the end of that issue. It's not at all, and I think there will be some HB2 legislation passed this session.
Becki Grave, what did you wish you had a chance to say and didn't get to?
When we were talking about the redistricting, Brad, one of the points that I think is really important is in the order that says the three-judge panel that said this districts had to be redrawn, there's only 28 districts. And if you get the map of North Carolina out and look where they are, I did that because I wanted to make sure that I saw what we were really talking about. Most of those districts are in the eastern part of the state. There are a couple in Wake County. There's at least one in Guilford County, and there's a couple in Mecklenburg County. There's none of those districts that are required to be redrawn are west of Mecklenburg County. So one of the questions becomes, what districts do they redraw? Where are they? Where are they impacted around those districts? You know, we could very well see a redrawn map that doesn't even touch the western part of the state. And we talk about these legislative elections. It's not going to be all across the state. It's going to be in very targeted areas, which puts a whole nother question on, you know, how does a new General Assembly look? How does a budget look this year that's for a 2-year system? And then turnout is, of course, another
My old friend Jim Crawford used to say, state government had the balloon effect. You punch it in one area and it balloons in another effect. Can you effectively deal with just 28 districts, you think?
Well, it may be more than that. It may be a total of, I don't know, maybe 30, 35 districts. But when you look at the map and where they are, I think it's a very likelihood that the western part of the state gets no effect of it at all. But you're right. I mean, you can't redraw one district and not impact around that. But how far out does that go? And I guess the other question is, how much leeway does the General Assembly have in doing that? Can they redraw the whole state? And if there is a danger of losing Republican districts in the eastern part of the state, do they do other things? I mean, there's just lots of questions out there for that.
John, what did you wish you had a chance to say and didn't?
Well, Brad, in the Tell You Something You Don't Know segment, I made a reference to this op-ed that ran in the News and Observer comparing North Carolina's level of democracy with Cuba and Venezuela and so forth. We got a good laugh out of it because it's laughable. Mm-hmm. But there is a serious point here, which is that piece and a follow-up piece that also ran in the NNO are some of the most read articles about North Carolina in the world. It was got national headlines, some international headlines, lots of people talked about it, and it was frankly just utterly preposterous. Now, what I think happened is a lot of people look at the headline, it comports with what they have preconceived notion about, or makes them laugh, or makes them angry, and they pass along, see, we're not democratic, we need to do something about that. They didn't go read it, they didn't read the underlying information. This is the definition of fake news. It was absolutely fake news.
One question I didn't get a chance to ask you was on the redistricting question, and it was basically this. Do you think the Supreme Court will issue a landmark ruling so that they can give legislators, not only in North Carolina, but across the nation, definitive rulings and guidelines on how to draw legislative districts under the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act?
Brad, that is exactly what the Supreme Court needs to do. It's what they've needed to do for 20 years and what they have pointedly declined to do. They do not want to get into that level of detail, but since it's pretty obvious they're tired of hearing redistricting cases, they need to understand that fundamentally it's not the Democrats' fault in Democratic state or the Republicans' fault in Republican states. It is their fault. They have not clarified what the Voting Rights Act means, and unless the Congress is going to rewrite it, the only way to get clarity is for the Supreme Court to say, this is what it means, is this what it doesn't mean, and that will resolve a lot of litigation.
Absolutely. Phil Kirk, what did you wish you had time to say and didn't get a chance to?
In researching the stripping bills for Holshouser and Martin, ran across quite a few about who was going to control the attorneys. Governor Martin and Lacey Thornburg didn't get along real well, thought Lacey was going to run against him, and there was one fight after another. about who had the authority over the attorneys that worked in the departments that were under the governor's control. And it was very complicated, and Jim Trotter, who just died a couple weeks ago, he was the one that carried the ball for the governor on that. But
To a certain extent, the legislature basically injected themselves into that argument last year, I believe,
right,
or 2 years
and
ago.
it's changed several times. My memory is it's changed who does what with the attorneys.
The one other thing we were talking about off camera during one of the breaks was the abysmal performance of the NC State WPAC against Carolina, and we all had a big chuckle about that. I don't know if there's anything any of us can do about it, but
Well, but I would,
Appeal it to the Supreme Court.
of course.
I would add that I didn't think the state would win,
So-
but I thought it would be a decent game because I'd just been to the Virginia Tech, which was ranked,
Right.
and State shot 70% the first half and 60-some% second half, played their best game of the year, and then their next game was the worst game of the year.
No
So
doubt.
what they're going to do in the future, nobody knows.
Right, my WPAC's got some work to do. All right, thank you guys for watching the After Spin. More video all during the week on ncspin.com.